In this tutorial, we will work through Caesar's Gallic War, Book 4, Chapter 34. At this point in the narrative, Caesar is in Britain, and some of his men have been trapped by an enemy ambush while collecting grain. Here, as we suspected, Caesar will rescue them. Quibus rebus perturbatis nostris, novitate pugnae, tempore opportunissimo Caesar auxilium tulit. Namque eius adventu, hostes constiterunt, nostri se ex timore receperunt. We begin with an ablative absolute, perturbatis nostris, our men having been thrown into disorder, confusion. Quibus rebus, linking qui, by these events, by these actions. And then novitate pugnae stands sort of in opposition to rebus, by the newness of this type of battle. Remember, in the preceding chapter, Caesar has discussed how the Britons use war chariots. Tempore opportunissimo, ablative of time when, at the most favorable time, Caesar auxilium tulit, Caesar brought aid. Namque, a little bit stronger than nam by itself, for indeed, eius adventu, at his arrival. And our textbook explains adventu as an ablative of cause, not simply time, but because of his arrival. With his arrival, the enemy halted, constiterunt, from consto, constare. Nostri se ex timore receperunt. Our men recovered themselves, or simply recovered from their fear. Notice the absence of a conjunction there. Asyndeton. Quo facto, again, we start with an ablative absolute, and this time the linking qui is part of it. This having been done, ad lacessandum hostem et committendum proelium alienum esse tempus arbitratus, suo se loco continuit, et brevi tempore intermisso in castra legiones reduxit. So after our ablative absolute, we have a participial phrase introduced by the word arbitratus. Understand, he, Caesar, our subject, arbitratus, judging, thinking. And now that introduces indirect statement. Alienum esse tempus. So, tempus is our accusative subject of the infinitive esse. Judging that the time was unfavorable. In English, we could also say judging the time to be unfavorable. And then we can fill in our prepositional phrases. Unfavorable, ad lacessandum hostem, et committendum proelium. Unfavorable for attacking the enemy, and unfavorable for engaging in battle. In both cases, the noun, first hostem, then proelium, is the accusative object of the preposition ad, That noun is modified by a gerundive, ad lacescendum hostem, for attacking the enemy. Very literally, for the enemy to be attacked, but in English we translate that with the gerund, for attacking the enemy. And for battle, to be joined, for joining battle, for engaging in battle. So, judging the time to be unfavorable for that, suo se loco continuit, main verb. He held himself, he kept himself, he remained in his position, suo loco. Et brevi tempore intermisso, ablative absolute, a short time having intervened, having been inserted, after a short time, he led the legions back into the camp. Dum haec geruntur nostris omnibus occupatis, qui erant in agris reliqui disceserunt. While these things are being done, all our men occupied, ablative absolute, those who were in the fields, those remaining in the fields, or those men remaining who were in the fields, departed. And reliqui and the relative clause, these sections are generally thought to refer not to the Romans, but to the Britons, the enemy. Remember, the Romans are busy fixing the ships and keeping themselves protected and well fed, stocked with food. Secutae sunt continuos complores dies tempestates, quae et nostros in castris continerent, et hostem appugna prohiberent. Secutae sunt. Our subject here is tempestates, nominative plural. Storms followed. Continuos complores dies is accusative of duration of time. For several days, for several uninterrupted days. Then we have the relative clause introduced by quae. Its antecedent is tempestates, and quae is our nominative subject of continerent and prohiberent. Storms which both kept our men in the camp and kept the enemy from battle. Notice that continerent and prohiberent are both imperfect subjunctive verb forms. Muller's note explains this nicely. We have a relative clause of characteristic, the sort of storms which kept our men in the camp. But because this actually happened, there's also a feeling of result. Storms of such a kind that they kept our men in the camp. So when translating in English, keep in mind it's subjunctive, but we can translate simply which kept our men in the camp and which kept the enemy from battle. Interim barbari nuntios in omnes partes dimiserunt, paucitatem quae nostrorum militum suis praedicaverunt, et quanta praedae faciendae atque in perpetuum sui liberandi facultas daretur, si Romanos castris expulsent, de monstra verunt. Meanwhile, the barbarians sent out messengers in all directions to all parts, and they proclaimed to their men, suis, paucitatem nostrorum militum, the small number, the scantiness, the paucity of our soldiers. The rest of this sentence is dependent on demonstra verunt, and they declared, or showed, they declared, quanta praedae faciendae atque in perpetuum sui liberandi facultas daretur. Quanta here introduces an indirect question with its verb in the subjunctive mood, daretur. How much, how great an opportunity, quanta facultas daretur, was or would be provided. An opportunity for, and then facultas is followed by the genitive case, noun plus gerundive, praedae faciendae, an opportunity for making plunder, acquiring plunder, atque in perpetuum, for all time, sui liberandi. Sui, the genitive of the reflexive pronoun, and liberandi, gerundive, adjective form agreeing with sui, and an opportunity for freeing themselves. An opportunity for themselves to be freed, but in English we translate that with the gerund, an opportunity for freeing themselves. Si Romanos castris expulsent. If they expelled the Romans from the camp. Muller has a nice note on this. Without demonstra verunt, if we imagine what the message was, initially they said, there will be a tremendous opportunity for taking booty and liberating ourselves forever if we shall have expelled. So dabitur, a future, and expulerimus, a future perfect. We translate these with past tenses of the subjunctive in the indirect question. And they declared how great an opportunity would be given for acquiring spoils and liberating themselves forever if they expelled the Romans from their camp. Finally, his rebus celeriter magna multitudine peditatus equitatusque coacta ad castra venerunt. We start with an ablative absolute, multitudine coacta, a multitude having been gathered. A great multitude having been swiftly gathered by these things, by these announcements, his rebus, and a multitude of peditatus, infantry, and cavalry, equitatus, genitives, fourth declension. Ad castra venerunt, they, the Britons, came to the camp, to the Roman camp.